No. No. So I caught one of the dogs barking here. No. The last step of really making sure that there's no noise is really my favorite, is just using an e-collar. So I use a mini educator, and that would be my preference to get this done. An adult dog, I have no problem putting on an e-collar and starting to teach them what that e-collar means in terms of noise in the crate. So the things you need to pay attention to is the e-collar, I put it on 15 minutes ago. So I didn't put it on and immediately start using it. Put it on 15 minutes ago so the dog doesn't realize that the e-collar is what I'm using to provide some correction. There's really no benefit to your dog knowing that the e-collar is what you're using, because the dog will be quiet when the e-collar is on, but then when the e-collar is off, the dog will make a lot of noise. So you don't really want your dog to know that. Another thing is the remote. I'm not going to be obvious with what the remote is, so I'm not going to click the remote in front of the dog. I'm going to be very kind of discreet. Remote behind my back, remote in my pockets, remote in my pouch, to make sure the dog doesn't realize that the remote is what I'm using to provide a correction for making noise. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by teaching the dog what the remote collar means in reference to the crate. So every time the dog barks, I'm going to stimulate on a level that she can feel, but not be too kind of disturbed by. So usually, in my experience, a level 15 through 20 is enough to where the dog can definitely feel it, but they're not going to be to the point where they're like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. So I'm going to put it on a 20. I'm going to go a little higher. I'm going to put it on a 20, and every time the dog barks, I'm going to say something to the dog. I'm going to say probably her name, and I'm going to tell her to be quiet since I'm all the way out here. And then I'm going to stimulate as the dog is barking to help the dog associate the stimulation with her making that noise. Once I've done that about 10 to 15 times, I'm going to turn it up. So I'm not going to continue to stay on a low level, because the goal is just for the dog to have an idea of why that stimulation is happening and then bring the behavior down quickly. So I'm not going to sit there on a 20, 30, 40, 50 and just constantly slowly go up for this. I just want the dog to understand that the noise isn't appropriate, the demanding behavior and the I want to get out isn't appropriate. You're going to get out when you train or when it's time for you to pee or poop. The dog's needs have already been met in the sense that the dog has had an opportunity to get water, food, pee, and pooping. So at that point, there's no reason for her to just be barking. Now, if you have a puppy who has to pee and poop, and you know that you fed your dog or your puppy, and you know that you gave them a bunch of water, you shouldn't be stimming them on an e-collar for having to pee and poop, because they're probably just letting you know that they have to do that. But once the dog's needs have been met, so you take them out, they pee, they poop, and you see that, and you bring them back in and they're still barking, okay, now it's time to provide some consequence there, because we've met your needs and you're still making a whole bunch of noise. So when she barks again, stim on a 20, do that about 10 to 15 reps, and then after that I'll crank it up to probably about a 90 or a high, and just go ahead and eliminate the behavior, really bring it down. If you're doing this and it doesn't work, you're just doing it wrong. So either your e-collar is not tight enough on your dog, or you're just not going up to 90 or high to provide that correction. I've done this so many times, and there's no dog that I can think of that keeps making noise after you've provided a clear consequence with the e-collar for making that noise. So hope this helps.